It is time for another episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. I'll be joined by the fighter Pete Rogers Jr. Here in a moment, we're going to get you ready for UFC 308, which goes down there on Saturday over in Abu Dhabi. Of course, early start time here in the U.S. Lock time, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Your main card on ESPN Plus will be at 2 p.m. Of course, it's going to be headlined by Ilia Topuria, making his first title defense as he is challenged by the former champion Max Holloway. Pete, how's it going, man?
What is going on, Jason Floyd? What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. We got a really good card, top to bottom, UFC 308 between Topuria and Holloway. This is a card that really makes me, gets me excited. It's tough to call a lot of these fights, which makes it shows that the matchmaking is top level. In addition to the competitiveness throughout the card.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, when the UFC wants to put together a load-up card, they certainly can do that. Yeah. Of course, more times than not, we do see it when they're over in Abu Dhabi. Pete, I'm guessing, so, I've got a computer in front of me. I got the iPad in front of me. I'm going to guess you don't have something on your secondary screen that I have on right now.
Oh, boy. What is it?
Power Slap's on right now.
Oh, hell no, Jason. Are you really? Oh, my God. This guy's double screening over here with Power Slap. Are you for real?
I just want to get your reaction. Yeah, Power Slap is in Abu Dhabi.
Okay, are you watching it right now?
Yeah, it's on.
Come on,
bro.
Jason.
I'm telling you, man. I was talking to somebody about this the other night. Like, you have to be crazy. I mean, absolutely crazy to do this.
I mean, I just don't even get me going. It's just not a sport. It's just stupid. Yeah, it makes me like bare knuckle. So, and my opinion on bare knuckle.
Well, I will say this, because I'm going to talk about it tomorrow on the Minute Report podcast, because Don Davis is out there just, I guess just throwing stuff against the wall, hope it sticks. But the one thing that I think Power Slap is doing that PFL is not doing is trying to maximize the amount of eyeballs that are on the product, and I think when you talk about it in the MMA, that's what it's got to be about, because we all know those 3 UFC letters dominate this industry. And but Charles, do appreciate the super chat as always. I love the super chats that come in here. Of course, as we talk about, UFC 308, and we kind of, by the way, our DraftKings contest is already up. You can get into that one. The link for that is in the description below. Of course, also got our Discord channel as well. But Pete, let's get right into game theory. And as when I first started looking at the salaries for this fight card, I mean, the main event just sticks out to you just because of in a cash game type contest. I think it's hard for me to get away from Max Holloway at 7,400. Thinking. I look at Ilia Topuria, with the pressure that Max Holloway brings, if this thing does get stretched out into minute 20, 21, and so forth, what he does. What is if Khamzhat Chimaev cannot get a victory within 10 minutes, what does he look like in round 4? What does he look at in round 5? Because remember, maybe some people may not realize this. This is a scheduled 5-round fight in the co-main event.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So the main event's compelling, right? Because I do think it's a really close fight. I don't think it's going to be a blowout from either side. I think it's going to be competitive throughout. I think that it touches the later rounds because Max Holloway, despite getting hit a lot at times, he hasn't been knocked out. And maybe Topuria is the guy to do it. Don't really know. So people can poke holes in Topuria's gas tank in certain fights, thinking that Max Holloway's pace and pressure will just kind of overcome. And the price point on Holloway is like really, really low. My issue is that in other fights, we have seen Max lose in 5-round bouts, against Alexander Volkanovski, and he hasn't necessarily scored the best in a loss. Like you would think that he would score better. I think that this could be volume versus damage, and you know what I mean? Like I really think that we might see that damage criteria kind of make judges lean a little bit towards Topuria. It's a really close fight. You're not going to really get a big argument from me if you want to back Max Holloway there, but I think starting with that fight's important. The co-main event, it's a perfect time to either stick to your guns with your belief in Khamzhat Chimaev like I am, or it's a perfect time to take a shot on the underdog, which is the former champion Robert Whittaker, who is proven to go 25 minutes against a guy that has looked taxed in round 2 and round 3. Maybe Robert Whittaker is the guy to really expose that gas tank. But every now and then, Jason, we run into these fighters that even when they're put into championship fights and championship rounds, they're finishers. Like Tyson, for the most part, made his career off of early round finishes. Khamzhat Chimaev kind of has that, characteristic about him where he's so dominant early on that he can get most guys out of there, regardless of how he may get exposed later on in the fight. So, really good arguments for Holloway, really good arguments for Whittaker. I think there's value on both underdogs, clearly, but I'm interested to see where you lie on some of these fights, and can't wait to really break it down.
Yeah, I mean, the other price tag that stuck out to me, and it just really scares the crap out of me. Kenny Nzechukwu at 9,700 in his UFC heavyweight debut. He has been through two different opponents prior to Chris Barnett. Of course, Chris Barnett was supposed to fight a couple weeks ago. He pulled out of that fight due to what, because he lives here in the Tampa Bay area with damage that had happened with his properties. And then, there's other ones I look at, and, do I really love a 8,900 Lerone Murphy against Dan Ige? Probably a fight that goes 15 minutes most likely, so don't really love the price point there, even though, last week we look at that same price point, even though she missed weight, looking at, Jocelyn Edwards, what she was able to go out there and score. Of course, Anthony Hernandez, what he was able to go out there and score there as well. But we got a ton of fights to break down here on this episode of Fight HQ. Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. We really do appreciate that. You can leave questions, whether it's in our Discord channel, YouTube channel, or right here on YouTube. We will get to those questions at the end of the show. Let's get right into it. Main event, Ilia Topuria defending his UFC featherweight title for the first time, as he'll be challenged by Max Holloway. Max Holloway is a plus 200 betting underdog, minus 245 for Topuria. Topuria, 8,800 on DK, $20 on FanDuel. Max Holloway is 7,400 on DK and $15 on FanDuel. And Pita, Ilia Topuria, I'll say this. Guy's doing a hell of a job promoting himself over the past couple of weeks. I think one of the things that I really wonder about this fight is the pressure of Holloway. I will be very shocked if Topuria comes in and points at the mat and say, let's sling in the middle of the mat as this fight starts. I truly believe when we talk about this matchup, Pete, that we are going to see Ilia Topuria implement takedowns.
I think that it's going to be an interesting fight, and I think the well-roundedness of Ilia Topuria is something that maybe a lot of the casuals aren't aware of. His grappling and his wrestling is top tier. I mean, he's really, really good on the mat, and he's gone to that well in certain fights. We've seen him go to that well, against Youssef Zalal years back. Seen him go to that well against Josh Emmett. I just think, like, if it's a close round, you get a takedown, you win the round. You know what I mean? Like, that's always been the mindset. And as long as, like, the damage isn't super significant one way or another, if it's a close competitive round, get a takedown. That's really going to influence the judges to give you that round. And for the majority of Max's career, he's had very, very good takedown defense. Early on, we have seen him get exposed on the mat in his young career. But, the guy's like one of the best to ever do it. He's an absolute legend. I think the volume is interesting. The kicking of Max Holloway is interesting as well. But the way that Topuria closes distance, gets inside and slips and rips, and really just kind of, lands those power shots on Max. We have seen Max get rocked in the past. We have seen Max eat a ton of damage in the past. Nobody's been able to put him away from a TKO KO standpoint. Doesn't mean that it's impossible. I do think that, it could be a situation where Max is edging out the volume, and then a couple power strikes makes the judges and all of us kind of think, well, the best shots of that round were landed by Topuria, despite the volume favoring Max. We could also see Topuria dominate early and fade late. I do think that Max at times, not that he can be bullied, but like we did see Volkanovski, implementing a heavy leg kick approach and game plan, just kind of stick and move with the leg kicks, the straight punches, some overhands, and I think that Topuria can do the same thing. He has very good footwork, but mainly he is the bull. He goes in there and he tries to close that space and land the power shots. It's really, really interesting fight. I feel like there might be, this is just a gut feeling, that there could be some argument as to who won the fight when the fight concludes. Like, I really think that it might be that close where it could go like a split decision, one way or another, and everybody's thinking Max should be the uncrowned champ, and Ilia Topuria is like, thanking thanking God that he's able to pass the test and get through Max Holloway. I just think one way or another, it's a hell of a fight. And I think that's where, a ton of lineups are going to be broken, or a lot of lineups are going to shoot up the leaderboard. So I'm hoping something weird happens, because if you take an underweight approach to it, it really gives you a ton of leverage on the field. Really hard to do so because it's a featherweight fight. But, last week, fading the main event did not work out. It did give you a ton of leverage on the field. But, man, Anthony Hernandez just cooked Michel Pereira. He really did. So fading that fight didn't make a lot of sense in hindsight. But it does present you with the lineups to really shoot up the leaderboard and take down a GPP. This week, I do think that there's enough fights, right, where you could possibly, end up making it work. If, say, Max loses and Topuria wins a decision, that it doesn't creep into the optimal lineup, because I don't necessarily think that we're going to see Topuria have the same 5-round score as he did against Josh Emmett, where it was basically one-way traffic for 3 rounds. Scoring 126.1 in that 5-round bout. So for me, it's a lean towards Ilia Topuria. I'm picking him to win. I think that he's going to land the bigger, better shots. But as far as value, this could be a hindsight call where you're like, dude, Max was the underdog. Max, I'm just going to bet on legacy, and he's 26-7 overall. So we've seen him do it time and time again. But I am going to pick Topuria because I do not love the bouncing between weight classes for Max Holloway as well. Just fought at 55, now he's at 45. We have seen him struggle to make weight in the past and kind of not absorb shots as he used to. But yeah, so give me Topuria with a slight lean, but you're not going to really get an argument from me one way or another.
One of the things as I think about this fight and thinking it from a DFS perspective, I just think it's really hard to get away from. Now, if you want to get leverage on the field, getting away from this would give you leverage. I do wonder, potentially, could Topuria maybe be a leverage spot just because of how many people may be looking at Max Holloway at 7,400, looking at the salary savings there. So that's kind of one of the things I've just over the past couple of days, thinking about salaries and where this could be. I just, with Topuria, I just wonder if this thing gets the 4th round and Max is just bringing it, and it would not shock me if this is a split decision.
That's what I'm saying. That's kind of what I'm feeling. I'm feeling that it's going to go the distance, and I think it's going to be really close. And I also think that if Holloway's touching up Topuria, despite most people not being able to take Max down, I think he will take Max down. I mean, Max has been throwing a ton of kicks, and sometimes his kicks get caught. He's almost taken down by Arnold Allen because of a caught kick. Was taken down by Yair Rodriguez from a caught kick. So there are moments where Max can be put on his back, and I do think that the ground game significantly favors Ilia Topuria to bank some rounds, and I think that's a sneaky way for him to win a round or two.
Yeah, you talked about last week, Anthony Hernandez going out there getting 192 points. And, and the other 2 top scorers were both females, Jocelyn Edwards and Elise Reed out there. And, of course, so we do have a DraftKings contest, so be sure to get in that for Saturday. Of course, as I mentioned, lock time, 10 a.m. Eastern time, so you got to get up bright and early, which I love me some afternoon MMA. I love me some afternoon MMA.
Me too. Me too. I got to work the night before till 7 a.m., so, I'm not sure if I'm going to even go to – not even sure if I got to go to bed or what I'm going to do, but yeah. And kind of to touch on last week, right? I got to settle down with some of these wild calls sometimes, but there are some moments where I do think that I have a solid read. Sumu Derji last week, I thought looked really competitive. Then he almost got cooked, and then he came back, and it was a competitive decision. Mm-hmm. And the adjustments of going to a very good camp, he did look better. He really did look better, but Charles Johnson is kind of on a streak. Whatever the hell her name is, Tamaris Vidal, she just looks, she's not good. So, I have to pick my spots, but I really thought I was going to look smart with that Sumu Derji call, and it did not come through. And clearly fading the main event with Fluffy Hernandez, just, man, it goes to show you, and this is what I said in Discord. If you guys are not a part of our free Discord channel, please click the link below and join us, where we talk about fights literally every single day, every single hour of the week. That I think I'm done fading pace pushers. I'm just done. I really am, especially in this age where finishes are slightly down, and maybe it's just a coincidence, but the Merab Dvalishvili, the Fluffy Hernandez, the guys that can go out there and just push a relentless pace, the Khamzhat Chimaev, the Rinat Fakhretdinov, like Lerone Murphy, like all these guys that could push a ridiculous pace, whether it's striking, wrestling, or whatnot, just keeping their opponents on the defensive. I think it's an age where like we're seeing that happen, and MMA kind of goes in waves, in stages where the strikers, the grapplers, but I think it's just weaponizing cardio. Certain fighters like this, like why avoid them? Why avoid them, especially for DFS?
And Sam in the chat asking if we think the main event's stackable. I would say yes. I think it is, but you do have 13 fights though.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking that, and then I was like, okay, well, if Max wins, it's not stackable. Because I don't think that Topuria at 8,800, comes through. But if Topuria wins, does Max do enough in a loss? And then if you look and you see what Max has done in losses in the past, on a card this large, isn't necessary. 58.1 against Volk, 42.6 against Volk, 53.9 against Volk, 78 against Poirier. Yeah, that would be it. You know what I mean? But that was largely just a striking matchup, and I do not think it's just going to be that.
Yeah, I do like the grappling upside of Ilia Topuria. In this one, of course, the co-main event will be Robert Whittaker taking on Khamzhat Chimaev. Robert Whittaker, a plus 200 betting underdog, minus 245 for Khamzhat Chimaev. Chimaev, $8,700 on DK, $19 on FanDuel. Whittaker, $7,500 on DK, $13 on FanDuel. I mean, I think anytime we talk about Khamzhat Chimaev, the health is always going to come up with him. But, to me, one of my biggest thoughts process in terms of this fight is the 5-round nature of this matchup. And when we have seen Khamzhat Chimaev step up in competition, I think most notably Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman, where we're talking about Usman taking that fight just on a couple days' notice, I think we did see it. Can Khamzhat take that next step to be, the elite of this division? I
wanted to be like everybody else and kind of hop off the Khamzhat Chimaev train, but I just can't. Jason. When I watch this guy, he's just different. I'm telling you, he's just different. And I'm trying to put my bias aside. In round 1 and 2, I'm not sure there's a better fighter out there on the planet. I got to be honest, Jason. I really don't. I don't think there's a more dominant fighter out there. The way that he goes in there and doesn't hesitate. He wastes no time. He shoots a takedown. Nobody's been able to stop his wrestling. Not even Kamaru Usman, who wrestled, throughout his entire collegiate career, his entire life. Despite being on short notice, doesn't matter. He knows how to defensively wrestle. Nobody's been able to do it, man. So, I don't know how Robert Whittaker is going to stop these takedowns in this pace and this pressure of Khamzhat Chimaev early. I know that he trains with Jacob Malkoun and a very good team over there and has some underrated wrestling. Absolutely. But the way that I see Khamzhat Chimaev implementing his game plan is second to none. He didn't shoot takedowns purposely against Gilbert Burns because of the jiu-jitsu aspect. I think he could have, and he could have cut through him and finished him with ground and pound, but he chose to stand and bang, and his fight IQ has been questionable at times. His medical history is questionable at times as well because he's been struggling to stay healthy. And he's had to pull out of various fights, whether he's missed weight or wound up in the hospital. And I really worried about Khamzhat Chimaev ever returning to the cage. And it seemed like it might have been like a Zabit Magomed Sharapov type of situation where the guy's potential could have never been fulfilled. And we could have always been asking, what if? In round 1 against Kamaru Usman, I don't care that it's short notice. Kamaru Usman is Kamaru Usman in round 1. He took down Usman. He ragdolled him. He took his back. He almost sunk in a rear naked choke before Usman slammed him on his head. He had Usman mounted. There are moments there where I'm thinking a guy of lesser grappling and wrestling skill of Kamaru Usman gets finished. I think that Robert Whittaker, for being such a fantastic champion, being a fantastic fighter, one of the best in this division to ever do it, I think early Khamzhat Chimaev can finish him. I'm telling you, I really do, especially if he's healthy. He talked extensively how he hired a ton of professionals to help him with his weight cuts. He's taking a more methodical and scientific approach to his training, so he's not just training to absolute exhaustion every single day, kind of breaking down his body, similar to how Junior Dos Santos did, where all that training was kind of negatively affecting him. I think that if all that is true, we might see the best Khamzat Chimaev, because I do think that he can be a champion. And the question marks about his cardio, absolutely legitimate. Absolutely legitimate, because late against Kamaru Usman and late against Gilbert Burns, he looked susceptible to get finished, or he looked human. Early on, he does not look human, and it's a pacing issue too. But I just think that there are certain matchups where he can really go out there and showcase his true skill set. Do I like that this is a 5-round fight? Absolutely not. If it was a 3-round fight, I think that I would call Khamzat Chimaev one of my favorite fighters on the slate. But it being 5 rounds kind of puts that doubt in everybody's mind, and that's what's making Robert Whittaker, 26-7 former champion, as an underdog so appealing. I get it. I totally understand. I said Max Holloway is a great value. I think Robert Whittaker's a great value if this fight touches rounds 3, 4, 5. Absolutely. If Khamzat Chimaev did something spectacular, because it's not that he doesn't train so hard. He trains almost too hard. Maybe he's absolutely healthy and he can show he can go 25 minutes. But the fight film does not show that. So I understand the Robert Whittaker underdog call. I'm still going to stick to my guns, and I'm going to be a little bold, and say that Khamzat Chimaev finishes Robert Whittaker in the first 2 rounds. But again, I totally understand why other people are going to be on the opposite side for Robert Whittaker and Max Holloway. But yeah, give me Khamzat Chimaev to really push the pace and be a spectacular DFS player here at 8,700.
From a betting angle, if you tell me this thing hits minute 11, I'll just live bet Robert Whittaker.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going to do, right? Because I do think that the crazy upside is for Khamzat Chimaev. Yeah. But the betting angle is live betting Robert Whittaker.
I do like the point that you bring up is a fact of comparing the grappling and wrestling defense of a Kamaru Usman versus a Robert Whittaker. I think that's a very key point. I mean, look, you love Khamzat Chimaev in the first 10 minutes, but as you just said, when you look at the film, when he hits that 3rd round, we see the drop-off there. Yeah. And with Robert Whittaker, it is one of these things of, at some point, he's got to hit the downside of his career. But to me, overall, the pick is Khamzat Chimaev in this situation. I don't know how eager the UFC is to put him in a title fight, just because of he has not shown the ability to be an active fighter over the past couple of years. Only fought once a year the last 2 years. There is the visa issue where they cannot get him into the United States. That's going to play a role into it. But this is obviously a huge opportunity here for Khamzat Chimaev. I think Chimaev gets the win, but as I said, from a betting angle, I think if this thing hits around 3, if there's a decent live betting number on Robert Whittaker, definitely want to go there. Next up,
I think. I'm sorry. Just one thing is, I think Robert Whittaker probably pushed the 5-round. He's probably the fighter that wanted the 5 rounds. He's smart. You know what I mean?
If you think back a couple of years ago, before he retired, Zabit Magomed, Calvin Kattar and his team were pushing for that to be a 5-round fight, because they knew. And if anybody remembers that fight, when it hit the end of the 3rd round, if there would have been a 4th and 5th round, Calvin Kattar was going to win that fight. And, there are just – we talk about this all the time. There's things we know and there's things we don't know. And we don't know what a 4th round Khamzat Chimaev looks like. We don't know what a 5th round Khamzat Chimaev looks like. We know what a 4th and 5th round Robert Whittaker looks like. Right. It's just a matter of whether it gets there or not.
Yeah, absolutely fair points.
Next up, we got a key matchup in the light heavyweight division. The guy that should be fighting for the title, but clearly the UFC just not. I don't want to give him a title shot. Magomed Ankalaev, he takes on Aleksandar Rakic. Rakic, a plus 280 betting underdog, minus 380 for Ankalaev. Ankalaev is 9,400 on DK, $21 on FanDuel. Rakic, 6,800 on DK, and $10 on FanDuel. Of course, Rakic, coming back from that knee injury, and this is a guy that not that long ago was considered a top 5 guy. Ankalaev has been the number 1 contender. But for whatever reason, the UFC doesn't want to give him. I think it's probably in relation to his fighting style here. But, to me, as I've been thinking about this just from a DFS perspective, even though I do like Ankalaev to go out there and get the win, Pete, I don't know what the fantasy score upside is for him here.
Yeah, I think from a fantasy angle, I don't think it's good, and I'm not a fan of Ankalaev. I'm not one of these guys that thinks that Ankalaev is like something spectacular. He's really good for the division, but I don't think like he's something we haven't seen before. Like when I look at Ankalaev, I just see he's very cerebral, very smart. Will wrestle when he needs to. Will strike on the outside and pick his shots. Has an excellent left head kick. Um, every fighter has ugly losses, but one of the ugliest losses is getting triangle choked with 1 second left in the fight to Paul Craig. 1 second, Jason. And granted, that's 2018. So, but I'm just saying, 1 second, 1 second is ridiculous. So at 4:59 in round 3, after he heard the clapper, he couldn't wait any longer and he tapped out. Now, since then, is this run impressive? Praknio, Klitzen Abreu, Dalcha Lingambula, Kudalaba twice, Krylov, Ozdemir, Thiago Santos, Anthony Smith, a draw to Jan, no contest to Johnny Walker, and then knocked out Johnny Walker, who gets knocked out all the time. I don't know. I mean, from a believer standpoint, I've always not been the biggest Ankalaev guy. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, I've been one of the biggest Aleksandar Rakic believers out there. And why? I look at this guy and I think he's so well-rounded. I think his striking's very, very good. Very powerful. He's cerebral as well. He will, land calf kicks like crazy. Was hurting Yuri early. It looked really good. Then Yuri's wildness and blitz just really caught him off guard and knocked him out. And that was the first time he's been finished, not due to injury. And that's just what Yuri Prochazka, a guy who's now 29-4-1, can do to you. I think like this can be a really competitive fight. I really do. Do I like the price tag on Ankalaev? No, I don't. I really don't at all. I actually think that there's value here on Aleksandar Rakic, and I understand like on paper it looks like he's been knocked out twice. But that Jan Blachowicz fight, he was doing really well, and then his leg gave out. That was in 2022. He had a leg injury. I believe he tore his ACL, tore everything in his knee, was out for 2 years. First fight back from that injury is Yuri Prochazka. Talk about not taking an easy fight back. And now he's against Magomed Ankalaev. But it goes to show that even the UFC and Rakic's management, they know like this guy, he's very talented and can be a champion and at least contending for a title. I don't think that this is going to be a great DFS fight. And if I don't think it's going to be a great DFS fight and it's going to be close at times, unless Ankalaev changes levels and attempts takedowns, Rakic isn't the easiest guy to take down. And he has some wrestling in his own right. So I don't think like it's like a massive advantage, in the wrestling department for Ankalaev. He is the better wrestler, yes. Mm-hmm. But I think like this could be a situation where it's 1-1 going into the third. So for me, from a value standpoint, I'm picking pace pushers. Magomed Ankalaev is not a pace pusher at all. He's a terrible DFS player unless he finishes you in round 1. I don't see that happening. Maybe he goes out there and puts a statement out there and says, I need to be the next challenger for the title. Finishes Rakic in 1 round. Okay, then I'll be like, all right, I changed my opinion on Ankalaev. But I think suspect strength of schedule. And again, I'm not going to hop off of the fight film of what I see from Aleksandar Rakic. So give me Rakic here to come through. May not win the fight, but at 6,800 may do well enough to help you really spend up for some of these pace pushers. So at 6,800, the value side is Rakic. I will still pick Rakic to win here and really pull off a massive upset over Magomed Ankalaev.
From the betting side, I actually like the Ankalaev wins via decision at minus 115. Yeah. I think when you look for some value out there, but yeah, from a fantasy score upside, I don't love Ankalaev at this price point. If it was a couple $100 cheaper, maybe I would, but I just rather get to other places. Next up, we got Lerone Murphy taking on Dan Ige. Ige at plus 235 betting underdog minus 290 for Murphy. Murphy is $8,900 on DK, $18 on FanDuel. Ige $7,300 on DK and $12 on FanDuel. And Danny Ige, to me, this is it's that situation where, are you a contender or are you not? And like that to me is Danny Ige. We all have massive respect for what he did earlier this year. But the one thing is, I hate to say it, man, he's got that G word title now. Like, he's a gatekeeper in this division.
Yeah, he's 100% a gatekeeper, and it's not like he's a high ranked gatekeeper. Dan Ige's tough, right? He's very tough. He's game. He'll land a power shot, knock you out. He will. He is a good offensive grappler when he has that advantage as far as like a submission standpoint. But for the most part, he's on the receiving end of getting taken down and getting controlled. I don't know. Maybe he's a little undersized. He might be a little undersized for this division. This could be a situation in like a year or two. We see Dan Ige drop down. I don't know what his walk around weight is. He just always seems like a guy that would have better success lighter. But when you do that, are you as fast as that division? You know what I mean? But I do think that Lerone Murphy mixing things up so well between his striking and his wrestling and his clinch control, cage control. This is a guy that's undefeated for a reason. His worst performance was against Gabriel Santos, who, in as wild as Gabriel Santos is, he's very well rounded, and that's what gave Lerone Murphy issues because of the wildness, the aggressiveness, and the pace that Santos can push. Dan Ige will not push that type of pace. He will kind of sit back. He'll engage every now and then, but he's not the one really dictating the pace and trying to finish the fight. I think that Lerone Murphy rolls here, and just going up 25 minutes with Edson Barboza, cooking him throughout 25 minutes between strikes and takedowns and cage control. Now he's back to a 15-minute fight. He can even push a crazier pace. So I think at 8,900, I think that Lerone Murphy's in a great spot against the guy who can be controlled, taken down. I think that I like Lerone Murphy here to win a decision. So Lerone Murphy to win a decision at 8,900. Because of his fighting style, I think that he'll do better than he has in the past, where he scored 80 and 97.9 and 59.9. So I think this is a situation where he can score similar to that Kulabau fight, that 97.9, and at 8,900, I like that a lot.
Yeah, once again, man, I just don't know if I love the fantasy score upside, though. That to me is just, what is, if we're talking about a decision, and I truly do believe this fight will go to decision, is what is the path to 85 points or more for Lerone Murphy?
I think he could take him down a lot. I really do. And not only that, we've also seen Dan Ige get dropped too. So we know that Lerone Murphy has some power in his hands. We've seen Dan Ige get dropped against Edson Barboza. We've seen Josh Emmett drop him. I think there's a situation where you can't predict knockdowns. That's the hardest thing to do. Yeah. But if they do happen against a guy with a guy that has a good pace, I just think it's a pace thing. I'm starting to just really back people with pace and pressure, those cardio beasts, and I do think that Lerone Murphy fits that category. It could be a situation where Dan Ige gets taken down a ton. 5 times against Bryce Mitchell, 9 times against Movsar Evloev, 3 times against the Korean Zombie. That's, you know what I mean? There's a situation where I think that we could see a higher takedown total than normal for Lerone Murphy.
Yeah, and also, I think the question is with, Dan Ige, the amount of wars that he has been through, maybe Izzy's going to start catching up with him or not. Next up, we got Shara Magomedov taking on Armen Petrosyan. Petrosyan, a plus 135 betting underdog, minus 160 for Shara. Shara's $8,600 DK, $17 on FanDuel. Petrosyan, $7,600 on DK. $13 on FanDuel. And, I know in our Discord channel, a lot of people have been talking about taking the underdog shot here on Petrosyan. The UFC has done a tremendous job of putting Shara in the right matchups. Not necessarily putting me in there against people that are that wrestling base. This is, look, these are two strikers in here, but are you like with our community and thinking Petrosyan is a good underdog shot?
I don't think it's a horrible one. I'm backing Shara Magomedov here. But the thing is like Shara is not all that impressive either. I think that he's a little above average. I just think that he's just in the perfect matchups time and time again. Armen Petrosyan is the fighter that has the less MMA experience, which is kind of crazy. 11 MMA fights for Petrosyan, 14 for Shara Magomedov. We've seen Petrosyan lose by getting submitted, and that was a terrible look. We've seen him get finished on the regional scene. We've seen him lose a decision. So, he got submitted so quickly against Rodolfo Vieira, who's a specialist, yes. But we also seen him get finished on the regional scene against Hassan Youssefov, in round 1. We've seen him get controlled on the ground. Some of his wins are really good. Like a split decision over Gregory Rodriguez is pretty impressive. Christian and Leroy Duncan's, victory, that has aged well as well. AJ Dobson, it's okay. But Shara Magomedov will push the pace in the striking. I just think that he's a little bit more aggressive. I like the way that the optics of him going forward, being the aggressor. He has a susceptibility to getting taken down. There's going to be a time when I'm fading him big. But this to me is not it. This is a kickboxing fight. Who's the better kickboxer? I think they're both good. So as far as an Armen Petrosyan underdog call, I don't hate it. I was thinking about it. I was debating it. But I'm not going to pull the trigger on it. This is a fight where I'm not really all that interested from a DFS angle. I think the price on Magomedov is okay, 8,600, but it's kind of right where it should be if you want me to be honest. Like 74 against Mihailo Leshchuk. 93.5 against Antonio Tricoli, 97 against Silva. I don't know. I feel like an 80-point performance coming through, mid-80s, because I do think that Petrosyan will have moments, but I'm not going to pull the trigger on him. I think that Shara kind of edges him out over 15. So give me Magomedov to win a decision here.
Yeah, I'm favor Magomedov in this one, but I don't mind if you want to take that underdog shot at 7,600. But I think it should be a fun striking matchup between theirs. And I will say this: I kind of like the Shara wins via decision at plus 140. Both of them, the decision props are nice over there. Plus 200 if you want to take Petrosyan in terms of that one. Next up, we got a matchup that is pretty much a straight-up pick-em matchup. Ebo and Rafael. Ebo a minus 105, minus 115 for Rafael. Rafael is 8,000 on DraftKings, $16 over on FanDuel. Ebo, 8,200 on DK, and $15 on FanDuel, Pete.
This 8,200, 8,000 fight pisses me off every week. It really pisses me off. Like, it really does. Because no matter what, I could research it like crazy, get it wrong. Not research it at all, get it wrong. Go with the guy who's the vet, get it wrong. Go with the guy who's the newcomer, get it wrong. So, I just don't know. I just think it's volatile, right? Like, just volatility. 8,200, 8,000 really helps you build your lineups because of the price tag. Typically, it seems like these fights make it into the optimal lineup. But we do have – how many fights we got, Jason? We got a lot of fights on this card,
13.
Right?
13.
If there was ever a week to avoid it, it might be this week, just because there's a ton of underdogs that I do think could potentially make it into the optimal lineup. And a second round finish for either one of these guys, second or third round finish may not make it optimal. The likelihood is, though, like Rafael Cerquiera, how many first round finishes this guy has? 6 KOs in the first round, 2 in the second, 2 subs in the first round. And then we already know that Aslan is just very dangerous as well. He was getting hit and touched up a lot in his previous fight, but like against Anton Turkalj. But then found the finish in round 3. We do have Aslan here with majority of his wins coming in round 1, 11 KOs. 11 KOs in round 1, 2 TKOs in round 3, and a submission defeat in round 2. we just got to hope it gets out of the first round if you're avoiding it like me. You know what I mean? Like, Ibo Aslan scored 85 and got the finish last time. So I'm just hoping that something similar happens here. I have no idea who to back in this situation, if I'm being completely honest, because we've seen Ibo under the lights from Contender Series, and then his most recent victory against Anton Chikal, where he knocked him out in the third round after losing to him earlier on in his career. And Rafael Cerquiera, like, I don't know, softer schedule, looks really good as far as his kickboxing. Might have the advantage in the grappling, but I don't necessarily know that he's going to go to that well right off the bat. This is a guy, we haven't even seen him on the Contender Series. I mean, canceled bouts, 3 canceled Contender Series fights. So now he's fighting a guy with 1 Contender Series fight and 1 UFC fight. Give me Ibo Aslan. But clearly this is a crapshoot, flip a coin. But I think that Aslan will probably get the victory here.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of that call there, but I think this potentially could be that key matchup when you talk about the price point on it and just kind of what both these fighters go out there and do. I mean, if you just looking at the prop bets here, you're talking about Ibo TKO KO plus 150. Plus 170 for Rafael. Of course, the decision prop is plus 900 on both sides of this equation. I think it tells you what the books think is going to happen here. Next up, we got Geoff Neal taking on Rafael dos Anjos. Dos Anjos, a plus 235 betting underdog, minus 290 for Geoff Neal. Neal is $9,200 DK, $19 on FanDuel. RDA, $7,000 on DK, and $11 on FanDuel. And, Pete, this to me is just classic UFC matchmaking.
Yeah, it's classic UFC matchmaking. Is Geoff Neal the guy that they were hoping? I mean, he has been in exciting fights. The finish on the Contender Series, finished Brian Camozzi, finished Frank Camacho. The best win of his career is clearly victory over Bilal Muhammad, which has aged well, and also the recent fight against Vicente Luque, where he just beat the hell out of Vicente Luque. But he has lost to Stephen Thompson. He did lose to Neil Magny, and Neil Magny landed a takedown or 2 in that fight. Most recently, losing a split decision to Ian Machado Gary. So now it's like, what is he? Is he a guy on the up? Is he just stagnant in the division, or is he just kind of overhyped? I'm not entirely sure, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm not entirely sure what he is, because going the split decision with Santiago Ponzinibbio, it's okay, but I mean, like, if you are making your way towards the title, or hoping to, as far as all this hype around Geoff Neal that there was once was, I think that you finish Santiago Ponzinibbio, or you make it decisive, not a split decision. So it's really hard for me to not back a legend here in Rafael dos Anjos, who has damn near 50 fights. I understand he's 39. I understand all that. I understand he's a former lightweight. But this is a guy who's bounced between lightweight and welterweight and has had success. This is the same guy that, despite being on absolute short notice, he ragdolled Renato Moicano. Like, absolutely ragdolled, beat the hell out of him. And we see what Renato Moicano's doing. Granted, was at a catch weight of 160 pounds. But still, like, just from a skill standpoint, we know the grappling skills offensively are there. Sometimes Rafael dos Anjos can be grappled and just taken down in certain fights where, like, Mateusz Gamrot, even Vicente Luque, who's just a bigger body with, underrated wrestling and grappling, was able to have success. But when RDA is in the driver's seat from the takedown aspect, and he's the guy that's able to push a pace, his striking's legit, his pace is legit, his jiu-jitsu is world class. I understand it's 2024. But if he's going up against a guy who might just be an overhyped prospect, I think there's some value on RDA. I know that, like, Geoff Neal can knock him out, but when's the last time we've seen RDA get knocked out? The only time was against Jeremy Stevens, I think. No, Eddie Alvarez knocked him out for the title. I remember that back in 2016. But prior to that, like, Jeremy Stevens knocked him out in 2008. Outside of that, he's been in wars and hasn't been checked out and knocked out So why am I expecting Geoff Neal to do it? He does have a crazy power in his left hand. It could absolutely happen. But who's the better minute winner here, Jason? Who's going to be the fighter that's going to be pushing the pace? RDA can strike. It's not like he's a bum on the feet. He's got excellent hands, good Muay Thai, chops the legs a lot. Them both being southpaw, I think that he'll chew up Geoff Neal's legs, and I think that he'll try to pin him against the cage and get some takedowns. So, hey, it could just be value hunting for me for DFS builds, and sometimes my predictions don't necessarily translate from DFS strategy to straight up picks. But I'm going to just back Rafael dos Anjos here. Let's say even in a loss, right? Like he might be able to do enough, especially if he's in a driver's seat with the takedowns. So yeah, give me RDA here at 7,000, Jason. I know it might not sound like a great pick or a common pick, but I'm going to go RDA here at 7,000.
Now, you look at RDA, this is a guy who's been bouncing in between 55 and 70 over the past couple of years. His last matchup was at 55. That loss to Mateusz Gamrot. Prior to that, a welterweight for Luque Barberena. I mean, the one thing you say about as a welterweight, these are his most recent welterweight wins. Brian Barberena.
Yep.
Then you have to go all the way back to 2017. To me, I'm backing Geoff Neal here. I think he gets the job done here. I just think that we have seen the best of RDA at this point, and the UFC is using his name in this position to prop up Geoff Neal here in this one. And by the way, that TKO KO prop for Geoff Neal plus 175. Probably if I was going to play a prop, I might more go the decision prop, which is at plus 130. Then next up, we got Rebecki taking on Orolbai. Orolbai is a minus 330 betting fair, plus 255 for Rebecki. Rebecki 7,100 DK, $11 on FanDuel, where Orolbai is 9,100 on DK and $20 on FanDuel, Pete.
Ooh, this fight's going to be crazy. Now, if Mateusz Rebecki did something to his game and did something to his training leading up to this fight, I haven't been able to deep dive on his socials and see, but perhaps he's fixed the cardio issues that really hurt him in his previous fight against Diego Ferreira. Even against Nick Fiore in his debut, you did see as the fight went later, he was not the same killer. He's an excellent round one guy. Round two, he's a little bit more average, and round three, he's just a shell of himself. So I think like round one, he can give Myktybek Orolbai some problems. He absolutely can. He can go out there and hurt Myktybek Orolbai. He can take him down if he wants to, or at least try to. We have seen Mateusz Rebecki land 4 takedowns against Carlos Ferreira, 2 against Roosevelt Roberts, 1 against Rajabov, and then 3 in his debut against Nick Fiore. I think he's probably going to win round 1. Does he finish Myktybek Orolbai? I don't think he does. I think that he's damn good. But a lot of times we see like early round finishers are hard to adjust their styles because they're so accustomed to getting their opponents out of there. So it could just be a style problem. Whereas like you have Rebecki finishing everybody. He's accustomed to that. And then he hits a wall when he's unable to do so. That's kind of what I'm seeing happen to him in this career, or at least it kind of is just shining through in that Carlos Diego Ferreira fight. Making adjustments to cardio should be easy, but it seems to be like one of the most difficult things for fighters to really grasp a part of their camps. So because of that, I do think that Rebecki looks really good early, starts to fade as the fight goes on, and that's kind of like right up Myktybek Orolbai's game, where like he gets stronger as the fight's going. Like he has that crazy pace and pressure about him. Round 2, I think that he'll end up winning. Round 3, I think he'll end up absolutely dominating. So, we've seen him go out there against Uros Medic, who's an absolute specialist in the striking, no ground game at all. Scored 123.2 and picked up that second round finish against Elvis Brenner, picked up that unanimous decision victory where he scored a knockdown, 5 takedowns, 7 minutes of control time, scored 107.6. I think it's going to be something similar. We have Rebecki really dangerous early. Myktybek Orolbai, weathers the storm, starts to take over round 2, wins round 3 dominantly, or potentially finishes Rebecki. So 9,100, I think, is a very interesting price tag, one that I have, starred on my spreadsheet. But the pick is going to be Myktybek Orolbai.
Yeah, I like Orolbai. In this situation, by the way, just looking at the props over there, Orolbai via decision plus 130, plus 275 TKO KO, plus 450 submission for Rebecki. TKO KO prop plus 800, decision prop plus 550, and that submission prop is plus 1100. Next up, we got Magomedov taking on Ferreira. Ferreira plus 120 betting underdog, minus 140 for Magomedov. Magomedov 8,400 DK, $16 on FanDuel. Bruno Ferreira is 7,800 on DK and $14 on FanDuel, Pete.
I think this is a really tough fight to call. And I think it's a really tough fight to call because Bruno Ferreira, he hasn't been in round 2 at all in his UFC career. I mean, a first-round victory over Gregory Rodriguez, first-round defeat against Rujaboev, and then back-to-back first-round victories over Phil Hawes and Dustin Stoltzfus. So I think that there is some uncharted territory here within his career for rounds 2 and rounds 3. But Abus Magomedov is a gasser as well. Like, we saw him gas significantly against Sean Strickland. Strickland really put a pace on him as that fight went on. Weathered the storm a little bit early, the first half of round 1, second half of round 1, started to push the pace, land some shots, back him up, put him on the defensive. And then in round 2, cooked him a little bit and got him out of there via TKO KO. I'm interested here because we did see Kyle Bahalio go out there and, absolutely dominate Abus Magomedov because of the grappling element, a part of his game. And then we did see Abus Magomedov, despite being a gasser, go out there and put a complete performance against Warley Alves, where he picked up a decision victory, had 6 takedowns, and 11 minutes and 56 seconds of control time, scored 105.5. I just don't think that he's going to have that grappling success against the judo black belt and solid Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner Bruno Ferreira. Ferreira is really known just for his hands. That crazy overhand left has significant power. But even if Bruno gets taken down, you see that he gets up in an untraditional way. He's using like a shoulder throw to kind of stand up and reverse positions. His judo is really, really good. His takedowns and his ground and pound is a difference maker. It really is. I just wonder how he looks in rounds 2 and 3. I think this is a competitive fight, Jason. I'm still going to back Bruno Ferreira, but I think this is going to be an ugly one. One where you could actually see Abus Magomedov picking up the victory too. So for me, I kind of view Abus Magomedov as like a hype machine, where it's like there's so much hype on him. We saw him get knocked out on, in the PFL against Lewis Taylor with a giant left hook. I've been watching his training, and it seems like left hands, for whatever reason, just land on Abus Magomedov. And I will tell you that Bruno Ferreira has one of the best dynamite left hands in the business. So not really a good thing for me to be seeing on fight film. My worry is if it gets into round 2 and 3, does Bruno possess that same power? I don't know. But I still will be backing Bruno here as an underdog at 7,800.
And you look at that TKO KO prop for Brunno plus 225 over there. And you mentioned about, you got to imagine that in those sparring sessions that his coaches have been saying, hey, we got to watch out for that left thing coming through. But, obviously what happens at this fight hits the second or third round. That's a big question mark there. Then we got Nzechukwu taking on Barnett. Kenny Nzechukwu has now this is his third opponent for this fight card. He is a massive favorite in this one. 9,700 on DK. $22 on FanDuel. Barnett, $6,509 on FanDuel. Chris Barnett is a guy that I'm very familiar with, a guy that fought here in the Tampa regional scene for a long time and finally got his opportunity here in the UFC, Pete.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I don't like the price tag on Kennedy Nzechukwu. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this fight just because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Kennedy's the better fighter in 2024. Chris Barnett, I think, will be in exciting heavyweight bouts. I don't like him in situations where he's significantly oversized or significantly at a reach disadvantage. And that's the situation here against Kennedy Nzechukwu, who should win this fight relatively easily. The problem is I just don't trust Kennedy. So, could you take some stabs on Chris Barnett? Sure, because he's experimenting in a division where he really hasn't done so in the past. especially at the UFC level. Chris Barnett's a true heavyweight. No way he's making 205. So he could land a shot and knock out Kennedy Nzechukwu, who has been knocked out by some questionable shots in the past against Jung in round 1 and then against Dustin Jacoby. I just don't see it happening. I think that Kennedy just kind of puts one-way traffic on him, just kind of picks him apart with long shots en route to a late finish or a decision victory. If Kennedy loses this fight, I mean, he needs to rethink a lot of things, a part of his career. So for me, it's just going to be fading the price on Kennedy. He could put up a ton of volume and break the slate. I like some other, high-end options. So why spend $9,700 for a guy that I just don't trust? So Kennedy Nzechukwu, $9,700 should go out there and just piece up Chris Barnett, but we shall see.
I mean, he should. He should go out there, but, look, it's you think about last week with what we saw with Spain, going out there and getting that loss against Austin Lane. And
I told you.
Yeah, I should have listened. I should have listened to you. I did not listen to you. I should have listened to you in terms of that one there. But, yeah, it is just, man, Kennedy is just one of those guys that I feel like I've just never trusted him in terms of what he brings to the table. But, this is a matchup that I think is tailor-made for him to go out there and get the win. We'll see if that happens. Next up, we got Basharat taking on Hugo. Basharat is a minus 725 betting favorite, plus 450 for Hugo. Basharat is 9,600 on DK, $23 on FanDuel, where Victor Hugo is 6,600 on DK and $8 on FanDuel.
My God, some of these fighters have just ridiculous odds attached to them. My goodness. Victor Hugo, he's got a ton of fights, ton of experience. Picked up a victory against Falcao. I think he's good. I just don't think that he's a Basharat skill level. I think that Farid Basharat has looked damn good. 3-0 in the UFC. Damon Blackshear, Rodriguez, and Taylor Lapilus. Lapilus has looked awesome in the UFC. So I think that win has aged really, really well. I do think that we can see Farid Basharat go out there and put together tons of takedowns, just good volume, good control, good everything. He's a pace pusher. And I don't necessarily think we've seen the best DFS score out of him. He scored 111 in the past. Other two fights were 86 and 81. Taylor Lapilus is just an odd fighter to score high on. So I think like 86 against Taylor Lapilus is pretty impressive. I'm expecting Farid Basharat to put up pretty big numbers this week. I'm hoping like 100 fantasy points at least at that price tag. I think there's room for some more, Jason. I'm going to take a little bold call here and say that he scores pretty heavily, and I want some of that a part of my lineup. So give me Basharat here by dominant decision or possible late finish. So at 9,600, is it a lovely price tag? No. But sometimes you just got to spend up and hope. So I'm excited to see how he looks in this fight.
I would rather pay 9,600 for Basharat than a 9,700 in Nzechukwu and 9,400 in Ankalaev.
Yes. What about Neal? Because I think so too. You think Neal knocks him out? Because if he doesn't, I don't think he pays off that price tag.
I don't know if Neal knocks him out. I think he wins by decision, but I would rather, like, if you told me I had to take one 9,000 option, I think Basharat would be that one fighter that I would favor over the other ones.
Okay, cool.
Just because of the matchup and now also their question is in a decision, how is he able to rack up the points? That is something to do there. Now, next up, we got Ismail taking on Brunno. Brunno is plus 150 betting, underdog minus 180 for Ismail. Ismail A 300 on DK, $17 on FanDuel, and for Bruno Silva, he is 7,900 DK and $14 on FanDuel. Pete.
Yeah, a little questionable re-signing here of Ismail Nardiev, and I'm like, I don't even remember this guy. I do remember this guy. This is the Austrian Wonder Boy or whatever his name was. So I was just like, no way, that's him. I totally forgot about him. It's a little weird because he's 3-3 in his past 6. He got armbarred in round 1, knocked out in round 1, and TKO'd via leg kicks in round 2. And in his wins, he's got a guillotine choke, a knockout, and then a decision victory. So it's just like, I don't know, man. I think it's just an opportunity, and when opportunity calls, you say yes. And he's going up against a very inconsistent fighter here in Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva training with Bruno Ferreira. So I've been watching their spar, and they've been beating the hell out of each other. And I think that Bruno Silva needs that push. I think that he needs to wake up because the fact that he did not knock out Chris Weidman, he talked about it saying that he gave him way too much respect. I agree. Gave him way too much respect, got fouled about 7 times in that bout. But that was a fight where he should have knocked out Chris Weidman. You know, there was a clear hole in his wrestling defense, but on the feet, he should have been the one in the driver's seat. And how can you trust him here against a guy in Ismail Nardiev who's 23-7? I just think it's strength of competition. But like we've seen Bruno Silva in here with some dogs. He is the same guy who knocked out Brad Tavares. So I am going to be picking Bruno Silva to win here. I feel like he edges him out over 15 minutes. But I just talked about how Ismail has been finished in several of his fights. So maybe Silva does come through with a knockout. It's just like every time I want Silva to really achieve something great, he kind of falls flat in his face. So like how the hell are you getting, out kickbox against Gerald Mearshart and then subbed? Like that's just terrible to me. And then you lose to Chris Weidman in 2024 and just not really letting your hands go. So I think that Bruno Silva is going to take a safer approach, but he's going to be in the driver's seat. And at 7,900, I think that he pulls through with the victory.
Yeah, and this is a great comment from Samuel in the YouTube chat where he says, biggest issue for me for those 9K options, will they meet value versus the mid 8Ks or even those fighters in the high 7K salaries? And Silva definitely is one of those fighters you can mention there. I think the key word of this show today has been pace. And the guy that's in the opening matchup of the night is someone that you've already talked about with his pace, and that being Fakardinov taking on Ilia. Ilia plus 190 betting underdog minus 235 for Fakardinov, who's 8,900 DK, $18 on FanDuel. For Carlos, he is 7,300 DK and $12 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm pretty familiar with Carlos Leal. I mean, he's won me a lot of money over in PFL. Carlos Leal is a guy who has very good striking, really good hands, solid and pretty good takedown defense. He can wrestle in his own right. He can grapple in his own right, but he really loves just boxing people up. He'll get clinches too. He'll throw knees to the body. If you do not dominate him and make him defend, he's live to beat the hell out of you. And that's the situation here is where like full camp, I'm telling you, Jason, full camp, I'm picking Carlos Leal to beat Rinat Fakhretdinov. Just because we've seen Fakhretdinov look more human throughout his UFC tenure as he's fought. He's looked absolutely unstoppable in his first 3 fights over Mihalidis. Brian Battle fight has aged really well. I think Brian took that on short notice, but still absolutely ragdolled him with 7 takedowns and 14 minutes of control time. That's absurd. Fights are 15 minutes. That's crazy. Only 50 seconds of that fight, he didn't have control. That's absolutely ridiculous. And then he finished Kevin Lee early. The draw against Zaleski dos Santos and the most recent split decision over Nicholas Dalby. So this is the situation, right? Like Carlos Leal was presented this short notice opportunity. He's been training for a fight already. But I think you have to tailor your training to who you're fighting, especially when you're fighting a pace pusher like Rinat Fakhretdinov. Like, imagine getting a short notice call to fight Merab Dvalishvili. That's a nightmare. That's not an ideal opponent you're training for. You need to really be working on your get-ups because I think that he will defend some takedowns and he'll look really good. How does he look if he gets taken down? Then he starts to get weighed on. You know what I mean? So this is a situation where full camp, I would be picking Carlos Leal. I understand he has a full camp, but not a full camp for Rinat Fakhretdinov. And what these American top team guys, where Rinat has cross-trained in the past, I'm not sure if he's there right now. I haven't looked at his socials, but they're implementing more and more ground and pound too. So I really love it. And a pace pusher in the opening bout, 8,900 Rinat Fakhretdinov. I think he's going to put a ridiculous pace on Carlos Leal where he's just constantly on the defensive. But if you go back and you look at underdogs in the first fight of the night have been coming through at a pretty high clip. So, I mean, you could do way worse than Carlos Leal. He is an unknown, a part of this card if people aren't familiar with PFL. I am. He's won me a ton of money, but I just don't think this is a perfect matchup for him. I do worry about Rinat Fakhretdinov fading as the fight goes on because in round 3, he does not look the same. because he just pushes a ridiculous pace. But I still think that Fakhretdinov gets it done.
Yeah, it looks like Fakhretdinov is training in Russia to prepare for this one. It looks like he's been over at Abu Dhabi for about the past 2 weeks in terms of that one. But yeah, we and was it Fakhretdinov's last fight where he faded in that third round, I want to say?
Oh, yeah, against Dalby.
Yeah.
Dalby's been doing that to everybody.
Yeah, that just kind of scares me there. Of course, you got any questions, be sure to line those up in the YouTube chat or in Discord. We're going to get to those here in a moment after our straight-up fight picks. The main event, I have been going back and forth on this one, and I think we're going to see Max get it done.
I mean, what I want to happen and what I think happens are two different things. I want Max to win.
Yeah.
I think like this. I think Ilia is the guy. I really do. I think that he's the guy. So I'm going to say he gets the nod. Ilia Topuria.
I will go Khamzhat, but do have concerns if this gets out of the second round.
Absolute concerns, legitimate concerns, but how could I? I would be so fake if I faded Khamzhat Chimaev right now. So give me Khamzhat Chimaev.
I will go Ankalaev.
Homer pick for me, Aleksandar Rakic.
Murphy.
Shara.
This one is just a straight up coin toss for me.
I literally have no idea.
I'm gonna say Rafael, but it's a coin flip for me.
No idea.
Geoff Neal.
Give me RDA.
Orolbai.
Yeah, Orolbai.
I'm gonna go Brunno and get the upset.
Yeah, I like Brunno here, but the obvious concerns too.
Give me Kennedy.
He better.
Basharat, yeah.
Basharat.
I'll go Brunno Silva.
Brunno. So it seems like that team will get 2 victories between both Brunnos. I'm gonna back Brunno Silva here as well.
And then Fakhretdinov.
I'll
get some questions in before we get out here on this episode of Fight HQ. We'll start over Discord. First up, value plays underneath 8K and a core 3 on DraftKings. Well, I mean, look, I think you look at value plays. I think main event, co-main event. Both sides of that equation. I feel more confident in Max Holloway than I do Robert Whittaker because concerned about the takedowns being taken down, just being controlled on the mat. Looking at other value plays, I think Petrosyan at 7,600 is somebody that I would label in there. Those would be my top ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think the value plays, it's the Brunno boys, the Silva and Ferreira. Main event, co-main event, Holloway, Whittaker. So I kind of gave you 2 right there, 2 high end, which is Brunno and Brunno. 2 mid, which is Whittaker and Holloway. And I'll give you 2 on the bottom that I'm kind of really circling, and that's RDA and Rakic.
In terms of a core 3, to me, the first 2 of that core is in the main event, co-main event. Where what I'll do is kind of get my exposure where I would team up probably Holloway and Chimaev together more than I would say team up Holloway and Whittaker together. But to me, the main event, co-main event are absolutely core plays for me. And then, when obviously if I'm having a Max or a Whittaker in my lineup that allows me to get to, I would say that the third one I would go is Basharat.
Yeah, I'm looking at my lineup right now. And if these underdogs come through, Jason, I have the craziest pace lineup in the world. So I love it. And I love it from a DFS upside standpoint. Do they come through? I don't know, but the potential's there for these guys to really break the slate for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to kind of put together a more I just kind of threw some fires in there just to get the contest up and going. So, but yeah, I'll be definitely putting some lineups in there. Next up, we got Sam with his usual question: best leverage plays. I tell you what, man, in a cash game contest, I think Ilia Topuria is going to be a leverage spot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you need leverage in cash, though, right?
I mean, I just think a lot of people are going to be going the Holloway route,
Yeah.
and so I think that if you're trying, maybe if you're like in those multiplier contests, which is a contest I really love to play, where you're whether you're paying $10, $25, whatever it is, and you're trying to get in that top three, to me, Topuria could be a guy really to target in those type of contests. Other leverage spots, I mean, RDA could be a very interesting leverage spot.
That's my boy. Him and Rakic are my favorite. Yeah. High-end leverage spot. Is it leverage, though? This is kind of a weird card with leverage, in my opinion. I mean, there's always cards with leverage, but, like, it might be Lerone Murphy. You know? It might be.
Yeah, very well be. Top punt plays. You know what? Who I don't mind going to a punt play with?
Chris Barnett.
No. Rakic.
Yeah, that's my boy.
Yeah, I mean, Barnett. I mean, look.
I just put Barnett in the lineup. Man, I could do so much.
I would tell you if I'm playing in a 20 max, I'm no more than playing Barnett in one lineup.
Yeah, I mean, God, remember when you got like Martin Boudet just schooled him?
Yeah, I mean it's. Best decision odds and favorite parlays. When you look at the best decision odds, Lerone Murphy at minus 160, Ankalaev at minus 115, Basrat minus 160, Fakardinov minus 115. Those would be your best decision odds out there. Favorite parlays.
I'll give you one.
Go ahead.
Chimaev.
Okay.
Murphy. Oh, God, that's not even like. So I got two.
Yeah, the problem is finding good value.
Yeah, I might go Chimaev, Murphy, and Farid Basharat, which I know is all chalk.
Yeah, what scares me about that is the money line on Basharat.
I know. What the hell kind of money line is that?
Yeah, I mean exactly.
Who the fuck? This guy's. What's what I'm saying? Some of these guys with their odds, anybody from like that's not American that gets just pumped to crazy. That's freaking crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice 725.
That's
pointless.
Yeah. Jason and Pete special here. Of course, that's for me is a first fight of the night.
Ew.
Fakardinov would be a guy that you would if he can get go to takedown city, but and we see it more times than not. That first fight of the night usually is optimal.
Chimaev, Basharat, and Murphy together is plus money, but barely. Plus 114. I mean, it's a fist fight. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
750 for Basharat? What's he, Jake Paul over here with the odds?
Pete, and of course, the Pete special A200 8,000. We know you're not.
I'm not touching that freaking match. I hate that fight. I hope they get canceled. That fight is horrible.
Road to the Mansion, 8.5. Sam, love you, man.
Less.
Give me the under. Give me the under.
Less all day long until they switch gloves. Less all day long.
Tristan here with his two questions. Best takedown upside. So obviously you gotta look at Chimaev. I mean that's
Chimaev.
That's gotta be where it starts. I think Ilia Topuria is another one that you got to throw in there.
I think it's Basharat.
Ankalaev, I think is a potentially interesting one.
I think he should. I just don't think that he does enough. I think it's Chimaev, Basharat, and Murphy for me if I had to give you three.
Next up, he wants us to rank the 9K options here. So at 9K, we have got 9,400. We have got Ankalaev. At 9,200, we got Geoff Neal. At 9,700, we have Nzechukwu. 9,600, Basharat. I would rank them as I would go.
Are we ranking them as wins or upside?
I would say you probably rank him in terms of the best plays.
Okay.
I would say I have the most confident in Basharat. I think he's got to be my number one. Number two is Nzechukwu because of his opponent more than anything else. And then I would go 3 Neal, 4 Ankalaev.
You're skipping Orolbai?
Oh. I forgot to check him on my list. Orolbai, I would put in front of Ankalaev.
Yeah, so I'm going to go Bashara, Nzechukwu, Orolbai. Dude, now Neal and Ankalaev, I'm not sure who I like more in that situation. I might say Neal. Ankalaev is just a little too patient for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we'll go over to YouTube. Some of the questions we have not gotten in here. Of course, we do appreciate all those super chats that have come in. Of course, we also have memberships here on the YouTube channel as well. So we appreciate all the support that we get here over on YouTube. Says, what do you think about the KO possibility for Rob, considering his last fight and Khamzhat getting chinned by Gilbert?
I think Rob can knock out anybody. We've also seen Rob get knocked out in the past. I mean, like, Khamzhat has power. And we saw what Dricus du Plessis did to him. So, like, there's a path for in 2024 for Khamzhat just to run right through Rob. But the thing is like, Rob's been in the UFC for like 10 to 15 years, whereas Khamzhat is almost the same age with less experience. So, I mean, yes, of course he can chin him. I don't see that happening. I will tell you, if Khamzhat loses, I think he'll quit on the stool. I don't think it'll be actual knockout.
Sam asking for favorite captains on the captain slate. I just looked to see if the captain contest is up. It is not quite up yet. Look, I think in terms of that captain contest, I think clearly the way to get different is to find a fighter outside the main event and co-main event. Look, I think in terms of that captain contest, Chimaev and Topuria would be the top two guys because of the grappling upside. Outside of that, I might take a shot at Geoff Neal as a captain.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm probably not going to put anybody that's not a pace pusher in my captain spot.
Yeah, no, I do definitely get into those captain contests. Of course, we appreciate everyone who's tuned in for this and each and every episode of Fight HQ. Of course, you can check us out on YouTube, also over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I appreciate everyone that's checking out. I do want to say, boy, was I damn wrong last week about Francis Ngannou.
Yeah,
he looked good, man. He looked good.
It happens, it happens, and it's okay to be wrong. Boy, was I wrong about Rob Font, right? Like, and Rob Font came through, and holy hell, congrats to him. I'm so happy for him. I said I was rooting and hoping he won. That's a cardio issue that Kyler just has not fixed, and that's what I'm saying. For whatever reason, that's the hardest thing for people to change, and it's just their style of fighting. And Rob really just went out there and put together a great game plan because of Faraz Zahabi and looked awesome.
And I will tell you this, watching the PFL live last weekend, one thing that really stuck out to me was the cut that Chris Cyborg suffered. I feel like there are some it amazed me the doctor never came in. It amazed me the doctor never came in.
I didn't even see it, so
dude,
I was more surprised with her victory.
Yeah, eyebrow, deep cut. Pacheco really impressed me. She took some shots in that fight, and she kept coming and coming and coming, and that was And then Francis, he showed he's a complete mixed martial artist. Unfortunately,
D1 Francis just shined through again. It wasn't too long ago when everybody was thinking Cyril Gane was just gonna completely dominate Francis with his fluidity, his technical ability, his striking, and then we saw Francis lace up those wrestling shoes, get on top, and just put together a complete performance. And that ground and pound, questionable landing. A lot of them.
Okay, first off. Okay. Hey, Big Dan, did you want him to die? Dude, that was a late stoppage. Like, he is out. And, good Lord. Like, it's just, the only unfortunate thing is, like, I don't know what fights the PFL can make for Francis. That truly interests me. I think
it's Ryan Bader. That's it.
I'm
not interested in that, but
Nemkov is probably, when we're talking about from a fighting ability, but like, I don't know what they do. I really don't.
I think it's Ryan Bader because of what he's done within his career in Bellator. So, and then that'll be like, that's an interesting fight. I think that it's not a good one for Bader, but he does have a path to win.
One of my other takeaways from that PFL event is AJ McKee.
I didn't see any of the card.
First off, at the end of the first round, gets dropped. If there's 5 seconds more, fight's over. Paul Hughes looked good. He looked good. I don't know if AJ McKee just hasn't been able to take his game to that next level, but the guy that we saw a couple years ago that was dominating at 45, I haven't seen it from him. And then the Eblen fight was, it was boring. It was boring. I literally had someone text me and goes, I'm falling asleep watching this fight.
Yeah. I bet you he would have scored well in DFS, though.
Oh, yeah. That's another guy that, boy, it would be very interesting to see how he would fare against
I think he'd do
the
really
upper
well.
division. Yeah. I mean, look, he's in the room he's in, he's going up against some of those top guys there. So, yeah. But as always, we do appreciate everyone who tunes in. Of course, we got that DraftKings contest. Of course, we got the Score channel. You want to jump in there as well. Pete, anything you want to leave us with?
No, I just want to say thank you guys for the consistent support. If you can hit that like button, get us over 100 likes each and every time. Drop some comments down with your boldest prediction. I think we might start doing something with the comment section. Maybe we'll do some giveaways or something. We'll figure something out. But again, appreciate it. Hop in that Discord, engage in the conversation, and enjoy some early MMA / afternoon MMA.
Oh, yes, definitely. I'm a big fan of an afternoon card, especially when I have to be at the stadium at 8:30 the next morning. So, yes, I'm a big fan as opposed to being up till 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning watching fights.
I feel, okay, just to say it from my opinion, I feel bad for your Bucks right now. Very unhealthy. I know we don't touch on football a lot, but I just wanted to say, good God, that was an injury-riddled Bucks game.
Yeah. Being involved in football broadcasting for as long as I have, when you see the trainer immediately call for the air cast, you knew it was bad.
Yeah.
It's when they bring that air cast out, that's I don't even have to see the replay to know what happened. Right. And I have been avoiding. I'm sure the photos are out there. I'm sure the video's out there. I always tell people, an injury is bad when TV will not show the replay. That's how you know it's a bad injury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a replay, but we are not going to show you. I'm like, oh, okay. Well,
yeah, that's
Twitter for the rescue. That's what that is. If I want to see it.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, when TV says we're not showing the replay, that's how you know. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. And yeah, man, it's
crazy football season. Seems like I know every year we have a lot of injuries. We feel like we got a lot of injuries. Like throughout the entire league, it seems. I mean, there's always soft tissue stuff, but I don't know, maybe it's just happening to the stars this year, but it seems like it's just a ton of injuries.
Yeah, but we got Bucks Falcons coming up this week, and by the way, 2 weeks from tomorrow, I'll be down in Miami for Double Down FC2. They be calling the fights with Ilia and Shannon Crowder, so looking forward to going down there as well. So as always, appreciate everyone tuning in to this episode of Fight HQ, and we will talk to you next week right here on the Fight HQ podcast.